Hello, world. Welcome to the Drifter's Atlas world building stream. Impromptu Saturday session with Zach and Thomas. We have no guest today because we are cleaning up. So
Yeah,
this is laid
I
back.
think I think a lot of our Saturdays are going to be like this, right?
Yep,
Sometimes we'll have a guest, but a lot of our Saturdays are going to be sort of when they fit in during the day, and which is often going to be at that 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock time. But I think a lot of our Saturdays are going to be like, hey, if we can get things in and sort of work on some of the things so our Tuesdays go really well, it makes sense.
exactly. Exactly. So today we have some Fae and forest world building to be taking part of. So we need to develop for our adventure that we're in the working on. Actually, two adventures. We need to know a little bit more about this errant crossing, this land bridge that connects the crater area to the rest of the world, and that butts up against the silver city of Filigree. So you can butt in Thomas whenever, but we know that this larger continent over here is more isolated, and and also we know that the Fae of our world inhabit this section more prominently than they do anywhere else. So the closest you're going to get, probably in the series of adventures, is this errant crossing area right here, and that's what we're
So
gonna.
in this series of adventures, we're sort of so what we're thinking of, or at least what I was thinking of, is somewhere. And if you want to refresh Legend Keeper, I'll put two pins in.
Yep. Refresh.
Refresh one more time for me,
All right.
if you can.
Absolutely.
Okay, you can see them. Never mind. They
Okay.
showed up there.
Perfect.
But you see the two pins that I just put, and you can
Yep.
hover over them. The one at the top, and then there's one at the bottom here. And I was thinking that there's probably a wall somewhere around here, whether it's down here, and you can see it move on our stream,
Mm-hmm.
like something like this, or if it's up from here to here. There's some reason why people aren't going into this eastern continent.
Let me pitch to you on an alternative answer there, right? What if the wall is a forest?
Is the forest so heavy people get lost?
Yeah, and also like there's a lot of fey magic, and that magic is an element of distraction and
Hmm.
whatnot. Because we know we're going to have walls elsewhere, and I don't mind it certainly having plenty of walls within this world, but I feel like walls are very much not a thing that Fey would. Not that there's only Fey over here.
No, and I agree with you 100%. When we all know walls don't work anyway. So, so we can a forest where people get lost, and even if we took away some of this landmass, right?
Yeah.
So we could even make the landmass go from here to here and
Yes.
bring in the ocean a little bit.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and do that because I think that's not a bad call. Let's see. I'm gonna boop 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 boop.
Something where it brings it in. It doesn't matter where we end. Again, I'm just using this pin as a marking spot so people can see what I'm talking about while you're moving. Um, but some sort of just like filigree is the entrance to this other part of the continent without taking a boat, then this forest for the Fae would be the entrance to this other part of the continent without taking a boat.
You think something maybe like that?
Yeah, something like that is great, especially if we clean out some of this area, right?
Which area is that?
Can you see on Legend Keeper? It's not going to clear out on my side.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if we round out some of that a little bit at some point.
Just kind of like this.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, just so it's not so harsh, right? Because I love the idea of certain places being harsh, but a whole chunk harsh looks funny, right?
Mm-hmm. You like something more
Yeah, I
like
think that looks good.
cool. We
Again,
can.
it doesn't look like somebody took a bulldozer and pulled the ground up. It looks like it was natural that way now, and these things happened.
Perfect. Yeah, and I almost feel like maybe that this needs to be a little bit more weirdly shaped, like that even. Um, I feel like otherwise
Yep.
it felt like too much of a column, which is not typically natural. Um,
Yeah, I'm fine with changing whatever we need to change in
yeah.
this C area here
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because it is a C.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's probably a land bridge down here at the bottom.
Right here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's some sort of bridge down there at the bottom,
Yeah. Yeah.
but but it is a sea. It is ocean water in here. It's not a giant lake.
Yeah. Exactly. Let's see.
So
We could kind of.
I will say I do love the idea of having my full-blown underwater city somewhere in here.
Hmm.
Something that's protected from most of the ocean, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or the filigree was also right.
Mm-hmm.
So we have these three C's that we should probably name at some point too.
Yeah. Yeah. But let's we're so for all of you who are watching, Thomas is we are on a time not crunch, but on a held to time for today because Thomas has a thing that he gets to do today. Um,
Yes. Today is my anniversary. I've been married to my wife for 5 years today. So
Congratulations.
thank you. And she got me this fancy wormwood Purple Heart dice tray today. That was
Ooh,
my anniversary gift because
very
5 year
nice.
anniversary is wood.
Yes.
So,
Awesome.
and those are the stone dice that I keep inside of it now. She
Sweet.
did not get the dice. She wants to. I told her that I wanted to get one of the sets of dice from the Wormwood Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
So that will eventually go in my beautiful
Hmm.
um, Purple Heart dice box.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. So what I'm going to start doing, because we know that this area is pretty much trees, right? At least to some extent.
Yeah, I
Um, I'm,
do. Are the whole crossing is trees?
I think that this is like not that I won't take some out, but that this
Okay.
is pretty much trees right through here.
Okay. I
Um,
think it goes deep
yes.
into the other part too, probably at
Yeah.
least till where yeah, maybe not, yeah, maybe that far.
Yeah.
But but you don't want it so far that we can't put things inside. I know you can always remove some of
Yeah.
it too, but
Yeah.
um
But yeah, I think that that's the pitch, right? Is that these trees are part of the wall feeling, right?
what what do you think? And I've been doing some research on Fae this week because I knew we were going to start talking about Fae. What do
Mm-hmm.
you think of parts of this half of the continent or parts of this part maybe not having a winter?
Ooh.
You're only 400 or 500 miles away from the snow. One, two, three. Yeah, you're like 50 something miles away from the snow,
Mm-hmm.
which normally you would still have a cold section. What if once you got deeper into this area, and what if you got deeper into this area, you just sort of had the spring, summer, fall seasons, and once all the leaves turned colors and dropped, they started growing leaves again.
That's interesting. I think
Because
that
it's
yeah.
that seems sort of like the autumn and summer and spring court kind of ideas for Faye.
Yeah, exactly. I think that that's kind of cool. Like, I could get behind that. As long as like I don't, what I don't want to do if we do that, what I don't want to do is mention, um, talk about winter and like a foreboding aspect, right?
No, no, it's not going to be winter is coming.
Yeah.
But but I think that it would be fun for our players, and it doesn't even have to tie into what we're doing in this story.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it'd be fun to tie into the players that if a player came from Filigree and it was cold,
Mm-hmm.
and then walked into the forest in a couple days travel and it's starting to get warmer and warmer,
Mm-hmm.
it's like the season changes, and that's and even if we don't go deep into it, it's a great tool for dungeon masters to really set that Fey feeling, I think.
Yeah, I like that. I like the idea that um, it's kind of like a cave, right? So like a cave is it's naturally let's see, paintbrush. There we go. Paintbrush. A cave is naturally the temperature is maintained, right? Um, and I like that the same is true for this. Like that the natural aspects of the Fey makes the temperature be a constant, or at least within a certain range of constant.
Yeah, I just think that, and more so than just temperature, I like the idea of just um what was I saying here? I like the idea that like the characters see these leaves fall, and then um minutes later, or not minutes later, but days later, so maybe they go all the way through the forest, and then they come back a week later and they start to see leaves already regrowing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is cool.
It just seems like that it just sets the tone of unnatural magic.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, I agree.
And I think that's what our goal here is, to set that tone of unnatural magic.
Right. I agree. I agree completely.
Um, and if I mean, I think if we can set that tone of unnatural magic, it sets the Fey up. Then whatever they come across, they're already gonna be on their toes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Exactly. Sweet. Okay, so let's talk about how do we imagine? So let me tell you. I guess let's start here. We know that the errant crossing needs to be a hazardous thing, right? Like this is there's a road that's cut through for several reasons, but navigating this forest should not be something simple, right?
is it in the center? Is it against the coast?
The road cut through the center. Um, I feel like I feel like it probably is in the center just because I think it's like protected.
Okay.
Like it's a it needs to be like you wouldn't want it against the coast where it's going to be hazardous during storms or whatever, right?
Yep.
Um,
That's true.
and also like pirates are over here, right? So you want something that has some distance away from the pirates.
The other thing that is important here too is that you want your players to feel like they're getting lost in the forest.
Yes, yes, I think so.
So I think that that is a great way to do that.
Yep, I think so. And what I'll do is, as we're talking here, I'm going to add more trees closer to that path, but um, because you're absolutely right that it needs to feel like um, it's a very tight thing. We want it. It's a map, not a one to one, right? So the path will look more clear than it actually is.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and the thing is with the map is what any good map is what somebody is representing that walked through this. That doesn't mean that the forest hasn't changed.
Right, exactly. Exactly. And
So,
we probably want to add some color to this, don't you think? Like, I mean, because we kind of want to notate that there is Fae in here, right?
yeah, I think so. I think
So,
for sure.
okay. So not a big deal, but we probably want like maybe some like oranges and reds.
Supersonic is saying created almost as loggers road, following natural allowances for terrain, and clearly no longer used regularly. And I
Yeah.
think you're on the same page as I am. I think that we see with the with this logging road or with whatever the road is, it's whatever the most recent time is when we were bringing not war machines, but logging machines and drillers and things like that from filigree down to the unequivocal diamond mine, right?
Yes. Yes. Exactly. That's the that's the purpose of it, is to allow for some land access to um, the crater area. So we are in agreement.
And there would have to be. I mean, what we could do is we could even do something like, um, oh, you guys will have like when they're leaving the if somebody was leaving the unequivocal diamond mine, they could say something like, "Oh yeah, you'll have no problem. Just 6 months ago, we drove our giant machines through,
Yeah. Exactly. Like.
and by the time you get there, you're like, what? It's completely dense again,
Yep. Yep.
and it leads to the idea that um, everything is changing.
Yep. Constant flux. And that though the Fae may allow some passage through, or you may have managed to get your way through, that may not be the long term. That's probably not a long term solution.
You can see anybody that is tuning in today that didn't tune in last week. You can see that we have named a lot of the places, a lot of the main contact points in red on the map.
Mm-hmm.
So we have finally got that updated in Legend Keeper as well.
Yep, it's looking good. A lot of names. That was a really successful stream last week. Um, really got quite a bit done. So we're that's going to let us kind of explode forward in momentum with coming up with some of this stuff, and it's going to give us some more confidence going forward in exactly what we want. And I'm almost feeling here, Thomas. What do you think? I know you can't. The map is smaller on your end, but um, I kind of feel like this road, the brown dots that I was using for the road, isn't showing up well.
Yeah, it's map is quite a bit small. Let me pull it over onto this other screen for now.
Here, I'll click off it so you can see. But and Chad, if you path, yes.
Yes,
Ooh, yeah.
I
Path could change, disappear. Yeah. Supersonic. I think that is going to be a key part of traveling this area. Is even though um, there might be a an idea of where a path should be, that doesn't mean that it's in the same place later. I'm going to go ahead.
it probably means that you can see some where a path might have been, but it could be that the path like starts and stops, or there's lots of ways to take your players through a Fey situation. The other thing is that if you don't know much about Fey, you also have the ability to, or you'd also um, have the resource of time changing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Fey is known. Any Fey situation is known for um, time gap issues. So
Yeah.
sometimes you go to the Feywild in, you end up you end up spending what you feel is weeks in the Feywild, only to find out that you have only spent a few days in the plane that you're coming from.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly.
So now I can see a little bit better. I have it pulled up on my other monitor.
Perfect.
So, yeah, you can see me working Legend Keeper on this monitor.
Let's see.
Yeah, I love the idea that Faye come in and probably didn't want to deal with an entire convoy of machines. But when your players go in and they are sure that they are going to be fine because they just traveled this path before, you now have a very different story told by the time your players get to Filigree, or by the time they are done taking this road.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I
Like,
also, oh, go ahead.
do you like so before I get too much further into this, do you like how that coloration is coming out? Does this kind of match our
Yeah,
idea?
for sure. It looks like an autumn forest.
Mm-hmm. A little bit, maybe even more colorful than your typical autumn, but yeah, that's kind
Yeah.
of the idea, right? Is I think I think we're gonna do even more purple right in here. I think purple's the color that purple and dark greens kind of are gonna be our way of determining uh, the deeper parts of this place, like so.
So I am on, while you are working on that, I am on D&D Wiki,
Mm-hmm.
and I am looking at some of our Fey creatures.
Oh yeah.
So they have something called a Cinder Hag, a Fairy of Navigation, which is lawful good. I know these aren't official 5th edition characters, so just trying to bring some things that might not be out in the.
So Supersonic is asking, is there a reason to take the path through the forest versus just sailing straight there? I think that the main point of issue there is pirates. Um, though you can take a boat, anytime you're on that sea, you're risking pirate run-ins. So like colony ships, military vessels, larger fleets are going to be okay. But like just taking a quick boat may not be always the easiest answer, especially if you're laden with supplies. Um,
Also, the fact of that this unequivocally diamond mine, and you can see that right here, right at the peak of this mountain, basically is where I have it on the map.
mm-hmm.
Um, if you go to, as you can see it on the left hand map there, there's that one pin, and that is where our diamond mine is, or where they're mining the fibrum. And Zach has that. Zach, can you arrow over that for a second for me?
Yes. Give me a second.
It's over to the left of the Errant Strait. Down, down one.
Yeah.
So that's where our mine is.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a big colony,
No.
supersonic. So one of the reasons why they would take the path through the forest is probably because they don't have vessels to just give away, especially because this is a 60-mile trip back and forth.
Yeah.
So they have a ramshackle pier, and that's about it. I think that there are times where you definitely can take a boat between Filigree and the Diamond Mine, but there's not on a regular basis. There's not going to be a boat going back and forth.
Right. Right. It's also about being quiet, right? So if you're mining fibrum, Um, yeah. Um, uh, if you're mining Fibram, you don't want that to be a public enterprise because that gives you a lot of attention that is not going to it's going to result in a lot of headache. Um, so by kind of you're risking running into the Fae, but um, but that's probably better than being an obvious mining facility of that sort. So Sonics is also saying one would just need to pay bribes, seduce the local pirates, and they would have to, and then they would have dock facilities. Yeah, the Celestial Resource. Yes. So the official name now for or the layman's term for this resource is now called Fibrum. Fibrum.
Almost like a gem sort of made out of fibers of glass.
Yep. Yep. It's something that
So,
is easily recognizable as not a diamond or not as a gem, but is in the same wheelhouse as a visually.
and that's one of the things we talked about on Tuesday. I know you were busy with work and stuff on that on Tuesday, but that's one of the things we worked around on Tuesday. So fibrum or filabrite,
Yeah.
something like that, is um, is what we're calling it, and I think that we're not going to have a problem um, with keeping it from pirates or anything. The trick is just going to be when there are boats at the dock that you could even take back and forth
Yeah.
to filigree.
Yeah.
I think more so than pirates. I think that's the real question that's
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of and again, there are definitely boats coming back and forth, um, but it's always nice to have two options. So one of the things, that's my fault. There we go. Um, one of the things that we could discuss is what you and you had kind of started this is what sort of creatures or what's this area feel like? What types of things can the party run into? And then also, we have some idea of what Fae are like in this world, right? We know bits and pieces, and they're not going to be your. There's more to them than just your stereotypical Fae creatures.
Yes, for sure.
The
Um, Go ahead.
they have their so one of the things that the Fae are um, they're also called Elder, and the Fae in this world are like the chosen or the preferred, the favored child of the um, old gods. So because there's now a whole new pantheon, the Fae live in a world of history and memory, and less so are creatures of the modern age. Um, that doesn't mean that they don't have interactions with the modern society, but that they have way less influence now, way less domain now than what they did before. But they are certainly still a major presence and one that you have to kind of deal with, recognize, and work around.
Also, it talked about we also talked about the fact that a lot of people have talked about the Fae being sort of crazy,
Mm-hmm.
not just sort of like rattle or addled. So I think that is something also that people sort of you got to think about as you go into this area. That the talk is that these Fae are not brain dead, but they're sort of just a little bit out there.
Right. Right. That's definitely true. They're they're certainly more foreign, um, and their priorities are different. Um, so you'll have some interactions with Fae potentially early on in the adventures, but it's not going to be. It's always going to be a weird experience.
Yeah, for sure. So, do we want to talk a little bit about these the creatures here, or
Absolutely. Let's do that. Let's dive into what sort of creatures
I,
could you see here.
I just think that like I understand that it sort of it might feel like we are doing this a little backwards, but at the same part, at least for me, I like the idea of um, I like the idea of thinking about what fits and what we're gonna build around. Because
Mm-hmm.
if the whole reason this forest is changing is because there's a hag or something here that's changing, sort of keeping the magic going in this area,
Mm-hmm.
that changes what's around.
Exactly.
It's different if there's a hag in the forest compared to um, if it's just fake creatures.
Exactly. It's a difference of chaotic or actually sinister, right? Um, and what sort of threats and what a threat actually means in the sense of this world.
Yep, absolutely.
So
Um, I've got monsters up here. These are Fey monsters. So these are a lot of these are so D&D Wiki, of course, is something that anybody can make a monster and put it up.
hmm
So a lot of these um, aren't like 5e recognized,
well,
but they do have to. Go ahead.
so the other thing with D&D Wiki, right? Because anytime anybody says D&D Wiki, I know our the knee jerk reaction is to say like, "Well, that's it's going to be trash," right? So the I'll add the right out the gate caveat to say this is not we're not going to steal something whole cloth, but it's a great source for inspiration.
That's exactly what we're doing. That, or at least exactly what I was thinking about for this is that this is a way for us to sort of think about what else might not be out there because while Fae has always been strong in Dungeons and Dragons, it's not super well represented in the monster manual.
Yep. Yep.
There are your normal things like sprites and fairies and things like that, but I think there's only like 7 to 10 Fae creatures in the monster manual.
Yeah. Not much. Not much. And that's because a lot of the creatures that we would maybe think were Fae have been moved to monstrosities. Um, so with that goes a lot of the like centaurs and hippogriffs or whatever are all either a monstrosity or a humanoid or something like that, and they lose the Fey aspect. Another great resource while you're looking up that one, I'm going to pull up. Sometimes you can get some great inspiration from Pathfinder as well because um, all their stuff is large. Most of it is open source, um, and they have devoted a lot of time to monster creation and creating a whole bunch of monster manuals. So you can kind of get some inspiration there. And again, we're just looking for like, oh, that would be cool, and we can take what they've got. One of the things that I don't care necessarily about is uh, taking something that's a weird word that none of us recognize and trying to fit that creature in. If we're going to design a creature whole cloth, I think we can just like I would rather just design a creature whole cloth than than take something from another source that is kind of their thing. So let's see, mites and leprechauns and gremlins. They have a creature called a Grim, which I feel like is probably a little bit on the nose. Quicklings, Redcaps, Satyrs, Sprites. So let me throw something out here to you, Thomas. What if we went the plant route for some of this? You may be muted. I think he thinks he. Maybe I muted. 1 second, folks. Let's figure out what we got. Say something.
Excitement.
There we go.
Test.
Yep, it works.
Okay.
Yep.
Did you mute me?
I don't think so, but whatever it was.
That's weird.
We're recovered.
I was talking about some of the creatures, and then you were talking over me. I'm like, Zach doesn't talk over me. What's going on?
Yeah, exactly.
So, sorry about that, guys. But so we have a couple options, and I have no clue if chat heard me or not. But we have, like, I have. Where did I have pull it up? So in 5th edition, there are 6 creatures classified as Fae.
In the monster manual?
Yep. And that's Green Hag and Sea Hag, Satyr, Sprite, Dryad, and Blink Dog.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it.
Yeah. There's not that many more if you look at like the whole of 5th edition, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is that with at least in SRD, 5th edition is pretty non-existent for the Fae.
Yeah.
But I mean, we had talked about it. Well, I don't know if it was on stream or if it was in one of our mini chats. We talked about fairy dragons.
Mm-hmm.
Those you could classify as Fae, in my opinion.
Yep.
We talked about another thing that you could use is like centaurs.
Mm-hmm.
While centaurs are hard to play as a playable race, since Ravnica came out, 5th edition has centaurs as a playable race.
Yep. And
they are probably, if they were coming from if there were centaurs, they would definitely be probably from this forest.
Mm-hmm. Definitely the eastern continent is where this sort of thing would come from. I was also saying I love the idea of bringing plant creatures into the Fae aspect.
Yeah, I could hear you for some reason, but for some reason I got muted.
Gotcha.
So, I love the idea of plant creatures. I mean, especially all those crazy vines and everything, like from Tomb of Annihilation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Where you have all these things that just make, if you were trying to be bad to the forest starts getting evil.
Yeah. Well, it's Fanghorn Forest, right? From Lord of the Rings too, like the treants. But there's even I don't remember what they're called, but there's the trees in Fanghorn have a semblance of sentience even themselves, not just the treants.
Yeah. And sway and everything else when things happen.
Yep, and they can even move to a limited capacity. They do that,
and I think that's where Supersonic was talking about it earlier, with the path sort of changing during a long rest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if we want the path to be that crazy changed.
I think it just gets reclaimed really quickly, right?
Yeah, I think that if the characters are gone a week or something like that, they're fighting through brush and those kind of things. I'm not sure, especially if this is something that these gnomes and dwarves at the mine have used a couple of times. Mm-hmm. We don't want it so crazy that they would be... First off, we don't want it so crazy that they would be aware, right? We don't want... In my opinion, we don't want people being told that the forest is crazy before they're in the crazy forest.
I think there's always a threat, right? Like, I mean, in any untamed wilderness, there's always a felt threat. Um, but that doesn't mean that um, people don't take that path, right? Um, I don't think anybody in the mining camp would be like, hey, you're gonna have zero issues with this forest. But I think they're gonna say like, it was just cut a few weeks ago, or we just had a caravan come through, or whatever. Like, there's gonna be some thought or some proven expectation that you should be able to get from one end to the other.
Yes,
Um,
for sure.
and then another thing that I'm thinking about as we're tossing around creatures is there really needs to almost be two types, at least two types, right? Because if all of the creatures are tied to one thing and all of the Fae are together, then the party can end up having if a party goes in there, like the whole forest is against them, so to speak. That's like a Mirkwood thing. But even in Mirkwood, like there's the wood elves, right? Um,
Yes.
and I think so. And some of the creatures that are Fey are like we talked about at the beginning. They're not meant to be harmful creatures, or at least not creatures that are out to kill you.
Yeah, I think for sure that there's a balance, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I think that this the Fae is sort of chaotic.
Uh huh.
I don't think there's really good and bad.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could have good. You could have a settlement. You could have a settlement of gnomes. You could have a settlement that is broken off from filigree.
Mm-hmm.
So there's options to put good in there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the Fae as a whole is sort of that whole hag, right? The whole hag idea as a whole is the way, at least in my headspace, I see Fae as a here you go. Fae can be great. They can work with you. You can get things done. Blah blah blah. You can pass unburdened.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you want to make it difficult for them, they can make it really difficult for you.
Yes. Yes. Uh,
And and with that, even if things are good, you see things just a little crazy.
mm-hmm.
Like like I was watching a video when I was doing some research on the Fae, and one of the things they talked about is like sort of satyrs coming in and visiting towns and things like that, and crazy things happening when the satyrs came to town.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing is just so much fun to play with it when you're a DM.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Um, I so if we're pitching like what is who has the domain or what couple of things have the domain of the actual errant crossing though, right? Because this forest can be huge, but this errant crossing is a strip of land. So to me, it's probably not overseen by 12 different fae. It's probably overseen by one or two.
For sure.
And so if we can figure out what those two are, we can kind of then build out minions and things based off of those. Um, I like the idea of one of them being a hag. Um, and we could make our own. We could either use the green hag, or we could come up with what does hag mean for our world, and maybe it's a little bit more unique. Uh, Either way, and then also, then if we have a hag, then maybe we have a dryad or something that is a more player friendly overseer of part of this domain.
Yeah, I love the idea of walking into this forest and you feel like you're walking in and it's cold, and you walk into the forest and it feels almost like spring has sprung,
Mm-hmm.
and you see rabbits and things moving around, and you see squirrels running up into the tree, and you see this and that, and then your players end up seeing either satyr or the other option is something like a unicorn,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and maybe they don't get a chance to track it down, but they see it in the distance.
Yeah.
um, and so it sets you up for this idea of this sort of fairy tale world.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you get to a point and you see, maybe you see that cottage, right, with the everything looks great on the outside, but when you open the door to the cottage, you see like everything is really dark on the inside,
Yeah.
or or something like that. That's like the picture I'm painting in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think we're on the same veins here. Um, hmm. Oh man, there's so many. Like Fae is such a. We need to.
So, trolls. So these are scary creatures from fairy tales and mythology. Trolls, witches, wolves, a Grendel. I'm not sure what that is, but um, sirens, the Minotaur, kelpies. I love kelpies as a fae thing.
Mm-hmm. They are right now. They are. Oh, they're a plant in fifth edition.
Yeah, but they scream fae. Like I
Oh
think
yeah.
I don't know if you ever played Pokemon when you were little or anything like that, and a lot of the classes were like multi-classed.
Mm-hmm.
So you would have a Pokemon that was both blah and blah. I think that like Kelpie is the perfect blah and blah. It's a plant, but it's also super fey, at least in my mind.
Oh
These
yeah. Oh yeah.
these water horses made of kelp that come in and lure people to drowning.
What do you think about the puka?
I don't know what a puka is.
So just look up like Phooka. They're like a weird mix between a monkey and a
Monkey goat.
donkey, and yeah, they're just kind of a weird and a rabbit. Um, I feel like that's kind of a weird, creepy looking creature that could maybe be fun to play with.
Yeah, that thing is super cool looking.
So in my mind, maybe okay. So let's maybe I think we're maybe starting to stumble on something. What if the at least in this strait there is a more plant based group of fae, and then there that are very much chaotic, and then there is a more creature based group of fae that are more like chaotic evil. So like chaotic neutral, chaotic evil. That's kind of the range that they're both in. Um, and the plants and whatnot use more of a passive aggressive, like maybe they block your way, or they get you lost, or they make it harder for you to whatever, right? Like it makes your life frustrating, but that's what they're trying to keep it to. Um, and the animal fae are like the fae that are more um, taking the initiative and more sinister in their interactions with the civilization. And like from a lore aspect, like I think the idea right could be, if I was going to give it lore, I would say that the it is because of their more bestial, animalistic aspects that these creatures are more nefarious, more malicious. Um, it is because they are closer to humanity or to the world at large that they despise it even more so, right? Um,
I like that. So they see these people taking over the forest, a lot like Lord of the Rings.
mm-hmm,
You see the people from Filigree or the people from the Diamond Mine who just plowed through the sort of this woods to get to places.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think that I think that it's very much like the vegetation fae are like, we will remain, we will live on. We've been here for centuries or millennia. A road is an inconvenience, but 100 years from now, a road is disappeared and forgotten. Right? That's kind of they're playing the long game, um, and they know or they believe that they can outlast whatever encroaches. Um,
Especially when your players are going a party at a time rather than with a caravan.
yeah, but then
I
these.
am. I know we talked about this before, but I always turn back in times where I'm stuck as a DM. I always turn back to my book, and it's called "The Monsters Know What They're Doing,"
Mm-hmm,
which is combat tactics for dungeon masters.
mm-hmm,
And there's a place where he goes over hags,
mm-hmm,
and one of the things that hags can do is things like Wall of Thorns.
mm-hmm,
It's a concentration spell that impedes movements.
mm-hmm,
So if a hag was watching you, she could set up, or he or she could set up Wall of Thorns.
mm-hmm,
Insect plagues.
mm-hmm,
Tree strides allows the hag to travel up to 500 feet at a time.
mm-hmm.
Dominate beast. Grasping vine. Call lightning. Plant growth. Flaming spear. Moonbeam. Spike growth. Entangle. Speak with animals.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea that maybe this Fae, maybe this Fae is changing, is casting sort of these spells on the forest.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of sort of the forest has its own magic, but let's say the hag is the one that's sort of helping control that magic.
Mm-hmm.
So while she realizes they sort of have to have a path, or else people are going to come through all at once
Yeah.
and clear out the threat, um, that doesn't mean that she can't do things like grasping vine and start to pull people into the woods,
Mm-hmm.
or wall of thorns
Yeah.
and make a giant wall that people have to crawl through or work their way through to get past a certain area.
Yeah. The
Uh,
and one of the things that I'm thinking about is like a hag. A hag is definitely like the humanoid animal, whatever that we talked about being evil, but it also can blur the line, right? This is not a clean line because a hag can cast stuff like Wall of Thorns or Grasping Vine that are more plant based, but also a dryad is almost certainly on the plant side of things, but it looks like a humanoid, so it's not a clean one to one, and I think that that gray is what makes it interesting because if you know, oh, anything that looks like a humanoid is bad in Fae, that's not interesting, or that it takes a lot of the mystery out of it. But as an outsider, not quite knowing where a creature might fall, what side of that aisle that creature might fall into, makes you hesitant, right? Is this Fae going to offer to lead me through part of the forest and then just abandon me halfway through and it feels like it's done its job? Or is this Fae offering to lead me through the forest and it gets halfway through and um, leads me into an ambush and it, you know, and 1,000 beasts, um, eat our party, right? Like,
what if there were two forces in this area trying to push back and forth?
mm-hmm,
So we talked about the good and the sort of the chaotic or the chaotic evil.
mm-hmm,
What if there were strong forces that were slowly pushing back and forth? So let's say it's dryads and a hag. Let's just say.
mm-hmm.
What if you flip the idea of who was who on its head? You take the hag and make the hag help the party, and you make the dryad be the one that's trying to keep them out of the party or out of the forest.
Yeah, there could be a reason for that, right?
Hmm.
Like, as an example, if we look at our map here, um, the forest is cut in two, right? And by the road, and we could say, well, the we'll say castle. It's probably not a castle, but the castle of the Dryad is now cut off from the main forest at large by the road,
Hmm.
as an example. Maybe it's over down here in the by the coast on the west side,
Hmm.
and the hag likes this road maybe, or it doesn't like the road, but likes like what the road is doing by reducing the influence that the Dryad has over the forest at large. And so the hag is saying, like you said, maybe the hag is saying like, I'll help you get through. And not only that, I'm helping this road be maintained, not because I like the road, but because I like what the road has inadvertently done. Um,
I also I also love the idea that we sort of trick the players, right? So an insect plague comes and it bothers the players, but it stops them from being attacked by something else.
mm-hmm,
Or things become entangled because um, players become entangled because something was going to happen when they crossed the path that the hag needed them to slow down.
mm-hmm,
Or Wall of Thorns showed up, and the reason that it showed up is because the hag didn't want the players to go a certain way. They
mm,
wanted to herd them a different way.
yeah, yeah,
And all of a sudden, the players are thinking like, "Geez, we keep getting attacked by this forest. What's going on?" And in the long run, they find out that they weren't being attacked; they were being saved by the forest.
yep, yep, yep. I think that's the pitch. Um, that the hag is trying to, not in a friendly way, but in a um, I don't know what the right word here is, but they're trying to maintain the status quo.
It's the copacetic relationship. It's the bird that lives on the back of the rhino that eats bugs.
Exactly, and the the party is weirded out by this initially, right? They're like, what, how, why would they do this? Whatever, whatever. But um, the reality is that um, the reality is that in any other circumstance, this hag would be their enemy. But for right now, it's their friend. And so what that allows, though, right, is the Dryad to not be a frustratingly antagonistic person either, right? The Dryad is simply trying to um, remove the road because it impedes the forest and because it disrupts the unity that the Dryad is working to manifest. Um, and but on the flip side, it's going to see that the when it sees the players working with the hag, that's going to irritate it, right?
Yeah, I think the real way to do this is to bring the dryad in as a friend almost,
Mm,
and let the dryad be seen pretty early on.
mm-hmm.
And the dryad's trying to lure your party into traps
Mm,
while they keep saying that watch out for the hag, and maybe the players see the hag 500 feet ahead, 150 feet ahead, whatever it may be,
mm-hmm.
and something happens, and they all have grasping vine on them,
Yeah.
and they're stuck there for 10 minutes or whatever it is. Um, and then when all's said and done, you find out for whatever reason that the dryad was the one you shouldn't have trusted,
Right.
and the hag was helping you.
Yes. Yes. and then the other, then it comes down to like, well, the hag was helping us, yes, but for what end? And so it's not a clean like, oh, we were only
No.
tricked. It's like, yeah, but do we even want, like, even given the opportunity, do we even want this to help this hag, or do we want to accept the help of this hag? Like,
Well,
there's
hags are going to do hag things.
exactly
Hags only want to help you because they want to get something from you.
right, exactly,
So at the end, you find out this hag to help you, and you have to decide if it's something else you want to go into a debt onto. It means that a lower level party can deal with a hag because you don't assume that you're going to fight the hag.
exactly. And if they
I like
do, yeah, more power to them.
Yeah, I like the idea, and I don't want it to be that they can't fight the hag, right?
Yeah, I mean, a hag
I
is
don't
low enough level that we could do either way.
I don't want to make it so hard that that the um, that the hag is sort of your only option is either to accept what she's saying or walk away.
Yeah,
I hate putting my players in a box like that.
yeah,
But on the other half, that I love making my players make hard choices.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So if I give my player a hard choice of, hey, this is what's going to happen, and especially if their whole ideas are blurred anyway, they think this dryad's their friend, and then they don't know if the dryad's their friend, or
right,
um, then they have to decide what that next step is.
exactly, exactly. Cool. I think we kind of know a little bit now, right? I think
Yeah, for sure.
we're making progress that way. Um, and I like that. Um, I think so. So I feel like if I was going to say, and this is maybe a little, but we'll have different people that like different things. But I feel like this is maybe a little bit more on the writing design angle. But I feel like to me,
Wow.
what's important here is that if we're going to use a hag, and I like the idea of a hag. I know we use them as examples, but I almost like the idea of it being a hag and a dryad. Um, and if it's that, I almost feel like both of these um, maybe need our own twist on them. Both of these creatures.
Yeah, I'm not against, I'm always against giving player choices more options.
Mm-hmm.
Because if people don't want to use our monsters, they can use any monster out of the book. They already have the stuff out of the book.
Yeah, yeah,
So by giving them our options, we're only doing them a service.
yeah. So it's like, you know, for this sort of thing, we I feel like if one we didn't design, it would be dryad because dryads are already lovely. Hags, though, we I think definitely we would do our own take on a hag. Um, and then I really think that this puka creature is 100% not in fifth edition already, and would be a fun cohort to the hag. Um, and then for the dryad, what do we think would be like fun minions for that? Is it just
Um,
plants or is it other creatures?
I think plants and creatures are great, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the best part about plants and creatures, if we're going to sort of make the dryad the bad guy,
Mm-hmm.
is that your players have no clue that they're connected to the dryad.
Yeah, and they can't interrogate a bush,
Yeah,
right?
or they can't interrogate a bear well.
Yeah, and they say
Mm.
Supersonic says players are unpredictable, so we don't know.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
that
if
applies
if
to all of this.
if yes, if I was changing my DM strategy because of players being unpredictable or not, we'd never get anything done.
Yeah. We're gonna account for, and I think maybe that's the way. Maybe for this section, there's always that chance that you have a party that guesses correctly early on, right? And says, "Oh, this dryad is the problem, and the hag is trying to help us," and they figure it out quickly. And then there's another party that never figures it out, right? And they insist that a hag cannot be helpful, and a dryad is almost certainly helpful. And the adventure probably plays out quite differently for those two individuals.
But the fun part about that is that then they still have to deal with a hag.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So if they say that the dryad's being unhelpful and the hag is helping or trying to help us,
Mm-hmm.
then you have to decide what that means. Why is the hag trying to help you?
Exactly.
And if so, if you take her help, are you on the hook for anything?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So now it is just it's just as scary, if not more scary, to be friendly with a hag than it is to be unfriendly with a dryad.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
So, so, and you're absolutely right, Supersonic, that all players are unpredictable, and I am the most chaotic player ever because I will do things just because I'm on a whim and it makes sense to me at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I was just playing in a game a couple weeks ago against with Tyler, the one who was playing in our dungeon stream, and the people we were trying to convince were bad people, and I just said that we were here to kill them because they were bad people, and everybody in my party was like, "Wait a minute, you're supposed to be sucking up to them. We're trying to get past." And my character's like, "No, I'm not sucking up to them. These are evil people. Like, we're trying to find a solution. That doesn't mean they have to be alive." And of course, it meant roll initiative and everything else. But
Is what it
sometimes, sometimes players have to play her.
is. Exactly. Do you
So
like do you like this area generally up here for a hag stronghold?
I do. I love that. I also love it. Let me pull the pin so you can see. I'm gonna pull the pin for filigree just for now. Let me unlock it. I also love down in this area. If you should be able to
Yeah,
refresh.
down over here.
Oh, oops, I'm on the wrong map. I'm looking at the YouTube, at the Discord. Yes, or across the river to the west. Either way. I like it up north. I like it in this area.
Mm-hmm.
I like it down there. Like, yep, right in there, Zach.
Mm-hmm.
I like it up north of that, like up and towards like where the wall would be or where we thought a wall would be.
Mm-hmm.
Or I like it down by the coast, down on the eastern side, eastern western side of that little inlet, or north of that inlet.
So I kind of think like maybe just like right in here. I kind of like this.
Right on the inlet. That's kind of
Right.
cool.
Yeah. And then I can paint a little bit to make it stand out a little bit more.
So that I'm gonna need a copy. I know we just uploaded it, and I think it was smart that we did, but I'm gonna need a copy of the map. That way I can adjust notes now that we've changed some of the topography.
Mm-hmm.
Before Tuesday, because we have that same DM I was talking about. We have Tyler on Tuesday afternoon or Tuesday evening.
Yep. We have some we have some really exciting guests coming up, and Tyler is the first of them. So we're
We have our friend Tyler on Tuesday. The Tuesday after that, we will have Fenway Jones, who is a teenage DM with
Jasper's game.
Jasper's Game Day. She's gonna be on next Tuesday, so we can talk about a little bit about how their stream went and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometime at the end of May, we have Amy Durza, which is one of the AL admins.
Yep. That's really exciting.
So we've got some cool things, and I have a couple other adventure writers sort of in the wings that I'm trying to space out.
Mm-hmm. That'd be
So
awesome.
it's really cool. It's really cool to have a different take every week.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And then we have our wonderful friends like David and Jonathan and Catherine, who are actually close friends of ours that also can fill in when we need expert opinions.
Exactly. How do you feel about me using a willow tree to represent the Dryad main location? Just so it,
Yeah, maybe a willow tree and like a small lake around it or something.
yeah, I mean, we'll make another map for it, right? But
Mm-hmm.
just for a quick icon,
Oh yeah, that is true. It's one of the best parts about Legend Keeper. If you weren't here when we saw it originally, is that when I put a pin in, like you can see on the map to the left, you could actually click on the pin and you can put a secondary map. So you're absolutely right that we'll have a secondary map there anyway at some point.
yeah, I'm looking for something that we could like easily recognize without being too invasive. Maybe just a tall one of these suckers. It blends in quite a bit, and that's what I don't
Like
want.
bright purple.
Yeah, um, maybe like this tree. That'd be cool. And then land.
Something super yellow or
Yeah, let's see. Um, paintbrush, orange, and then let's add like a yellow because I think could use a yellow anyways.
which is weird, which doesn't look too out of place, but it also is a there you go.
Yeah,
That's perfect.
yeah.
Because it doesn't look too out of place in that forest, but it's enough that we know.
Mm-hmm.
Boom, boom, there it is.
I might just do a little boop, 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 just a hair tone down
Yep.
towards orange, just so it's not violent. So now we would put like, and we can go ahead and put labels on these. We're wrapping up the stream here pretty much, but we know that this is going to be a dryad stronghold right over here. So we'll just go ahead and put that there just so we remember what that is. And then I love the idea because it kind of ties in with what we're saying where they like hate civilization, but they also are the closest to it, that a hag has taken over an abandoned strong keep over here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Something else just to let people know that when we get through a lot of this map, we will start cleaning up some of these names. Some of these words and stuff won't be on our finished map.
or if they are,
Um,
they're less obtrusive.
yes, because we're not just going to have these giant red names all over the place.
Nope.
Um, it's gonna get nicer and pretty. If you want to see, if you really are fascinated by maps like Zach and I are, head over to Reddit and look up Wonder Draft. Whew, those maps
Yeah.
are beautiful sometimes.
Yeah. And our map will get there. We just have a long ways to go
Yeah,
to populate it.
yeah, and we are also new with Wonder Draft as of last month.
Yes.
So
Yes.
we are learning as we go, but that forest that we did tonight and these eggshell peaks and everything are looking fantastic. Wonder Draft really does a lot to take a novice designer like this and turn it into a very pretty product.
Yep. I like if I was gonna say like I feel like maybe like this much of this continent that I'm painting here right now is forest.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
Because I want it to be like an imposing section, right? Not not something
The
that is
question
easily
the
met.
question I have is when it attaches to filigree. Does that curve or something like the is part of that river that goes around filigree is what stops the forest is right on the other
Yep,
side of that river?
I think so. I think so. I think there's like a natural boundary and then an unnatural one that filigree is put up. Um, but yeah, like definitely the Fae have like they're going to be pervasive throughout this whole area. But this piece right here is our quote unquote wall um, of just dense forest that is not advisable to work your way into.
For sure.
I like how it turned
For
black
sure.
right there for some reason. That's really interesting.
Right where?
I'll zoom in. See right here how it turned
Oh
black?
yeah.
Like I'm like, oh, that's definitely. I'm gonna figure out why, because that's
Yeah, even
cool.
though it wasn't planned.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the texture didn't quite come through on the land, which is interesting. But yeah, so we know there's dryads and hags, and there's probably several other dominant forces out here. Um, but we don't need to figure out what this is right now, because that's basically like in WoW that'd be like a high level zone.
Yeah, more than anything, we have talked about how this map plays out for the next couple of years, probably of us working on this map, and a lot of this Eastern Kingdom area is what we talked about a being maybe the second uh the second like strategy guide, the second continent that we work on here after
Mm-hmm.
Ascension goes live.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We need to another big thing that we'll be talking about before too long is what does this area of this world look like, and what does this area look like? Because we don't know a thing about these two sections.
Yeah. Well, fortunately or unfortunately, whichever way you want to look at it, we're sort of jumping around because Zach and I are working on things in the midst of this,
Yep.
um, working on projects and everything else where we sort of need that information.
Yep. Yep.
So if we end up jumping out of an area that you want to talk about, either hop in the chat and say, "Hey, I'd love to talk about this in another day or two," or tune in the next time, and I'm sure we'll get to it because none of this is going to be forgotten. We're just trying to, since we're on a pretty tight schedule, we're trying to get some of the other stuff done as well.
Yep. Yep. Perfect. Thomas, it is
It's, get,
5:15.
it's getting there.
I
It's
feel like
getting there.
I feel like we should do some quick announcements and then
Yep.
call it good. Um,
Awesome.
so let's dive into these. So you already mentioned one. That's Jasper's Game Day, which is actually starting today, I believe, and it is 60 hours of Dungeons and Dragons.
They sort of have like the opening ceremony tonight.
Mm-hmm.
There is there's no games tonight, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
It's a round table. It starts at 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific time. And it is on Twitch, and I will link the Twitch on our Facebook as soon as I'm done here.
Mm-hmm.
It is sort of a who's who for everybody that is some sort of the bigger names that are part of this Jasper's Game Day stream.
Mm-hmm.
So I know Fenway will be on it, and so will Amy, um, and so will like Satine Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
She is a sort of a designer there in California. She grew up connected to like Geek and Sundry and some not grew up, but she for a long time was connected with Geek and Sundry and some of the other projects that are coming out of the California area with Critical Role. Um, and I think, if I remember correctly, tonight, like Matthew Lillard or one of the other um, big name streamer kind of people are going to be on as well. And it's sort of like an opening ceremonies for the week of content.
Yeah.
And then tomorrow, starting at 12 o'clock Eastern, 12 in the afternoon, that would be 9 o'clock Pacific. And then for our Central fans, Central would be 11 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
They have starting their game start. I will be playing starting at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I will be playing Zephin Creed, my changeling sorcerer.
Sweet.
So it'll be a fun game, and I think that game is set in Inverness,
Mm.
so it should be fun.
Cool.
I'll have a little bit of dressed. I'll do some cosplay for that one. So if you guys want to see me with red face paint, that'll be fun again. And then I will, and I think, tell me if I'm wrong or not. I think we're going to host the stream as well
I hope to.
for that game, and then the game that we play on Tuesday at 12 o'clock Eastern, Zach is going to play in a game that I am running,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to be the game is called The Motherlode, and it'll be first the first adventure linked to Ascension,
Mm-hmm.
and it will be when you start off traveling from the Tusk, and that will take you to the unequivocally diamond dig site,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to be a lot of fun. I
I
hope
think
to really get into it a little bit. We only have 2 hours, so we're going to have to keep moving, but I think it's going to be a ton of fun.
absolutely. I'm excited for both of those events, and for really a lot of the events that the games that are going to be played there. Cool. Let's see. Other things. Keep in mind that our next official stream will be Monday night, or let me rephrase that. It'll be Tuesday night, um, where we come back and build some more here. Um, so that'll be Tuesday at 9 Central. Um, Other things that are important uh, that I'm thinking of. One, for the next 2 weeks, the DMs Guild is doing a special thing for content creators where they get double the revenue. So you don't have to pay anymore, but the actual writers and creators of content are getting twice as much as they would have normally for their content. So any content that you have been thinking about purchasing, have been sitting in your cart for a while, do those people a service and go ahead and pick that up over the next 2 weeks. I'll go ahead and plug that. A lot of the creators that you've seen on the stream have stuff that are on DM's Guild. Jonathan Christian, who was on a few weeks ago, has just put out a product with me and a couple other guys for Eberron. It's called Salvation Expanded. You should definitely check that out. Um,
Fantastic.
yeah, we are really proud of that. We're gonna have some more Eberron product coming out, I think tomorrow. Um, so there's gonna be a lot of different things. I've got products on there. There's there's a whole host, and there's a million great products on the DMs Guild, so you can't go wrong. Just diving in and sifting around. Um,
Especially a lot of them are $5 or less.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a big
So
deal. Um,
so for $20, instead of going out to eat on Saturday night or Sunday night, spend $20 on the DMs Guild, put that money right back into creators' pockets, and get a bunch of product that you didn't know you needed.
Yeah, buy some, like there's some really great player class options that we even talked about in the last few weeks. That would be really great. That will really expand your players' potential at the table. There's the pugilist class. There is a slayer class that I really like. I have a class on there called the linguist. You can't go. You'll your players will thank you if you open up a few more things that way. If you're in Waterdeep or something like that, there's really great products to help you build out a monstrous city like that without spending hours and hours and hours. Um, so,
One of the biggest things that I've used in the past is that if you are running a hardcover book from Wizards in one of the adventures, almost always they have people that have done write-ups of chapters and everything else. So there's place thing, so like a spark notes of that adventure.
yep, yep, tons of good stuff.
So so there's a lot of stuff that makes sense.
Yep.
We are. Do you want to announce what we talked about this afternoon a little bit? We got some time before it comes out.
Um,
Gonna hold off on that.
what did we talk about this afternoon, Thomas?
We talked about we're gonna do some
Oh, yep.
interviews with some content creators.
Let's. We're working on. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
the safest thing to say right now is that we're working on building some more connections with the creators on the DMs Guild, on Kickstarter, and on places like that. So hopefully we can go into bigger detail than that in the coming weeks. But for right now, I think it's safe. And the safe thing to say is that we're
yeah.
working on something to get you more content for this sort of thing.
Hopefully that with that we can get some of those people in the world building, so we can sort of hear about their ideas and hear about their products as well,
Mm-hmm. That's the plan.
like we did with David.
Exactly.
So
Exactly. I think
awesome.
with that, thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you in a few days.
See you soon.